guys, welcome back to another video. So I've got Melon here again. I have the lavalier now, which is basically just a mini microphone. So I hope it'll go okay. It is a little bit windy, the weather's not that nice, so hopefully the sound quality is okay. So today, for the second episode of my ideas and philosophies sort of thing, I wanted to talk about horsenality, personality, horsenality, you get it. This is a Pirelli concept, and I don't agree with the way that the Pirelli people execute their method, but I agree with a lot of the ideas behind it. Horsenality is basically just a way of analysing their general traits, behaviours, attributes, whatever you want to call them, to determine what kind of thinker they are and what's the best approach to use when you're working with them. So there's left-brained horses and right-brained horses, and then there's also introverts and extroverts, and all horses will fall under either left or right-brained, and then also introvert or extrovert. Hi! What do you think you are? So Pirelli have what's called a horsenality chart, and basically you can fill that in to try and determine what type of thinker that your horse is, what categories they fall under. Melon is a right-brained introvert. Basically he is high fear as opposed to high dominance, so he's not a leader, he's a follower. Good boy. His thoughts move faster than his feet, generally speaking. So left-brained horses are sort of pushy and dominant, whereas right-brained horses are more reactive, more fear-orientated. And just because your horse might be right-brained doesn't mean that they explode at every single little thing. It just means that they end up on being more heavily weighted at that end of the scale than left-brained. So they show more traits of being a right-brained horse than a left-brained. It doesn't have to be to the extremes. It can be relatively, well distributed, but they'll always fall under one category or another. Hi. He's getting jealous. And then you've got introverts and extroverts, so it's sort of self-explanatory. So an extrovert is a horse that basically they're a bit more highly strung, have a bit more spirit about them, they are a bit more reactive to things, and generally they're quite good at telling you what they think about situations. And an introvert is a horse that sort of is more likely to shy away from things and is sort of a horse that sinks into their shell a little bit sometimes, and they can lose confidence relatively easily, and they look to others for support. They're basically followers, they're not usually very high up in the pecking order in the paddock. So he is an introvert. Like, he might not be scared of everything, like, I can do this, and he doesn't care, and probably because I've done heaps of desensitization with him, and he just doesn't care. It doesn't mean that he's not an introvert because he's not exploding at everything. Like, that's not what defines extrovert introvert. Rather than the physical habits that they tend to express, it's more about their patterns of thinking and how they process things. And you can determine what categories your horse falls under by having a look at the Pirelli horsenality chart. You want to try and be as fussy as possible. Don't over exaggerate. Like, say your horse bucked this one time with you under saddle, don't just label him as a bucker, sort of things like that. So you have to be really fussy and make sure that you try and be as accurate as possible. By figuring out what categories your horse falls under, you can understand how to work with them a lot better in a way that's not going to push their limits or stress them out or be too confusing or frustrating for them. If you approached say a right-brain extrovert the way that you would want to approach a left-brain introvert, when you give them a question, there's probably going to be miscommunications because that's not how they think about things. That's not their natural thinking pattern. They don't understand it in that way. So it's really important to consider the horse and just what works for them. It's like everyone has different study methods as well for school. They say that people fall under certain categories, like an auditory learner, which means you learn best through sound, like listening to music or listening to lecturers. Or, there's visual, pretty self-explanatory, watching videos, reading, etc. Or I think it's called kinesthetic is the last one, which is basically just touching things. So like building models and just things like that, or matching cards up. So it's the same thing for horses. So left brain or right brain, introvert or extrovert, like we are auditory, kinesthetic or visual. And I think there might be a couple others, but I don't remember them. But when I was in middle school, they all got us to do this test to figure out what type of learner we are, and from there we could figure out what kind of study to do so we could learn as efficiently as possible and in a way that we understand. And we've got to consider our horses in the same way. Not every exercise is going to make sense to every horse if you present it in the same way to every horse. So you can give 10 different horses the exact same exercise, but you might need to rephrase the question to some of them because they just won't understand, and it'll become stressful and frustrating, and they might start acting up, which is you know, not them being naughty. As I said in the last video, horses don't have a mental capacity to be naughty. It's probably just more so them being confused and frustrated and not knowing what on earth to do. So with a left-brained horse, the goal with them is to get their respect, pretty much, because, you know, they're sort of like, what's in it for me? Like, I don't have to do anything, you're not the boss. That's sort of their attitude towards things, typically speaking. And, you know, they're the more bossy, dominant horses. They'll test their luck a little bit sometimes. So you need to gain their respect, but at the same time, you have to be super respectful to them, because if it's just a, you know, a superior inferior relationship, where's the will? You know, where does your horse find the motivation to want to work with you if they're just being pushed into everything that you're asking them to do? So that's why I say you need to respect your horse before you can even expect them to respect you in return. There was a good quote that I heard a while ago, and it went like, respect existence or expect resistance, and that applies with horses as well. If you can't respect that a horse also has limits and they also have comfort zones, they have likes and dislikes, they'll find some things easy to understand and other things really difficult and stressful to understand. If you can't respect that, then there's going to be issues communicating with them, and that's why I think it's so important to understand what kind of thinker that your horse is, so you can actually communicate with them in a way that's easy and relaxing for both of you, and that makes training sessions so much more enjoyable for both of you. So as I was saying, with a left-brained horse, you need to try and gain their respect, and then with a right-brained horse, you want to try and gain their confidence. So Melon is a right-brained horse, and horses can find confidence in themselves through the try. A lot of the time that people will work with their horses will try something and get the wrong answer, and the owners will just not acknowledge it because it wasn't the right answer. But if your horse tries and, you know, they don't get the right answer, but you're still like, hey, I saw that, I saw you tried, thank you for trying, you know, that was really good, and I appreciate that you put the effort in and you found the confidence to try, then they'll be like, "Aw, thanks, Mum," or Dad. They'll feel a lot more secure in themselves, and they'll feel a lot more secure in you, and they'll be able to find the ability to ask you questions when they get confused, which is so important, because if a horse can look at you and ask you a question when they get confused, as opposed to rearing or kicking out or biting or something in defense, then you're going to find communication with them so much easier. Stop eating the rope. He's getting so bored. 2-year-old things. And with an introvert horse, you want to slow down their thoughts, and with an extrovert horse, you want to try and slow down their feet. An introvert is the kind of horse that's likely to overthink things, and, you know, they're always over-analysing, saying, oh, did I do the right thing? I don't know if I did. Should I have done that? Introverted horses are prone to anticipating negative responses if they don't get a reward, or at least told that they did the right thing, or that they were good for trying. With an introverted horse, you want to let them know that you're only going to ask them one task at a time, because as soon as you give them a to-do list, they're like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff I gotta do. I'm not even going to bother. If you give them one small task and they give you the slightest try, and you reward that, and you're like, good boy, or good girl, thank you for trying, I saw that and I acknowledge your try, thank you for putting in effort, they're kind of like, oh, that wasn't too bad. It's like with Leisha, when I do groundwork with her, the first things that I do pretty much are asking her to take one step forward off onto a circle just by putting my hand out in front, and then gradually twirling the whip behind her. As soon as she takes a single step forward, I give her really big pats, good girl, and I just let her stand for about 30 seconds. And she's kind of like, whoa, that was a really big reward for not doing too much. And it's not bribery, it's letting them know that you actually notice all these little things that they're doing and you appreciate their effort. And by the end of it, I can get her doing basically walk to canters just on the lunge from putting my hand out in front of her nose. And it's not because I've pushed her or given her 3 warnings before smacking her on the bum with the whip or anything like that, so she's learned to go because she's anticipating this negative pressure. It's because she's found the will to work with me. She's found the motivation because she knows that I'll acknowledge her try, and she knows that she can feel proud because she feels like she's done a good thing. And it's so important for a horse to be able to feel proud, and that's where you get the results from, when a horse can stop and think like, hey, I did something good and I got recognized for it. You know, that's what they want to have. They want to have that recognition when they've tried. It makes me really happy when I see horses that have found that try and they feel good, and they feel good about themselves. Don't try and eat the lead rope, because they know that they're going to get acknowledged if they put in effort. And with an extroverted horse, you want to try and slow down their feet. So extroverts, you know, they go a million miles an hour. They're the kind of horses that when things go dicey, that they'll run. So you want to try and slow down their feet and get them to slow down where they can relax, because you can tell when a horse is starting to relax, and you can tell when a horse is starting to think. They'll not be so rigid through their body, and you can see them blinking. And you can't get an extrovert to think until you slow their feet down and bring them back down where they can relax. And you know, the world isn't going a million miles an hour. So the summary of horsenality is, with left-brained horses, you want to try and gain their respect, and you need to be respectful towards them as well. And you need to be respectful towards all horses. Like, it doesn't matter if they're left-brain, right-brain, introvert, extrovert. You always need to respect them and respect their boundaries as well. And right-brained horses, you need to try and gain their confidence, really making sure that you acknowledge the try. And even if they get the wrong answer, that's okay, because they tried, and that's all they want to do. You know, they want to try and do what you're asking, and if they're confused, that's fine, as long as they try. And later on you can refine it to the point where they do find the right answer. You want to tell your horse, you can't make mistakes. You know, there's no wrong answers, because there's no mistakes. You know, you can try, and whether or not that's the right or wrong answer, it doesn't matter to me. You know, as long as you give me that try and you show me that you're trying to figure out what I'm asking, and you want to try and work with me, you want to try and make it work, that's what matters to me. Introverted horses, you want to try and stop moving their thoughts and really making sure that giving them a lot of positive reassurance and letting them know when they've done the right thing, so that then they can find that confidence. For introverts, motivation is a really, really important thing, because if an introvert doesn't have that motivation, and you need to help them find that motivation through letting them know that you are watching them and you're aware of them when they're trying, and that's how you get a horse that's happy to be around you and wants to work with you. And then extroverts, you want to try and stop moving their feet, to slow them down and bring them back to a point of relaxation. So that's today's video on horsenality. You can have another look at it on the Pirelli website. If you just search up Pirelli horsenality, you'll be able to find the document on there that can help you determine what horsenality your horse belongs to. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've got a couple others planned. Let me know what you think in the comments. Give it a like if you liked it. And if you are new here, I'm Ivy. This is my 2-year-old Connemara Melon, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks. Goodbye!